Get excited, craft buddies, because today at Whiskey and Wit, we are kicking off the most wonderful crafting time of the year. It is time for Christmas DIYs. From cozy home decor to giftable ideas, I've got you covered. I've even got some hacks in there. And this is stuff you can get done early, so come December, you can just enjoy it. So sit back, relax, and let's get crafting. You're watching Whiskey and Wit. My name is Whitney, and a huge welcome back to my Whiskey Craft Buddies. If you're not already subscribed and a Whiskey Craft Buddy, be sure to do so before you leave if you like today's video so you won't miss any future DIYs. Also, a huge thank you to Wildgrain for sponsoring today's video and helping me bring you all of this Christmas inspiration. Let's get into it.
Just about every high-end site, there are these glass ball textured metallic Mercury glass ornaments, and I wanted ones that A, wouldn't break and that were a lot cheaper. So you're going to get yourself some shatterproof plastic clear ornaments. You can get them from literally anywhere, Dollar Tree, any craft store. And then we're going to make a fun little contraption to spray paint them. I used some Dollar Tree bamboo skewers and I popped them into a box that I just had in our recycling to act as a makeshift holder so these wouldn't roll away on me because they're round. I realized that I put too many skewers out, so I didn't put them on all the skewers, but once I laid everything out, this was the perfect way to spray paint these. I used some flat black spray paint, the Rust-Oleum brand that I love, which I will link down below, along with all of the other supplies I'm using today, and I gave them all a full coat of the spray paint. You may have to jiggle the box or styrofoam, whatever you're using underneath to hold them just to get them to spin so you can get all the edges, and it took me 2 times because I ended up spinning them once they were dry with my hand. Then once they're completely dry, I used some antique gold rub and buff, which usually I use the gold leaf, but I thought this coppery color in the gold would be awesome. I put on some gloves. I put a little dab, like a toothpaste size, pea size, in my hand. And then I rubbed my hands together and started rubbing them on the ornament. I found that if I was trying to brush it on the ornament or even just rubbing a huge amount from one hand, it didn't get the same effect. And so with the 2 hands, you were able to get uneven but really pretty texture. And then you could use those stands again to get everything to dry. My last step was to take my caps and my little hanging hardware and do the same thing, cover those with a little bit of that same color rub and buff, so then that way they wouldn't stick out coppery gold to silver. Once I popped them back in, I was like, ooh, we are cooking here. Then I cut some black velvet ribbon, which you could use any kind of ribbon that you want. You don't have to go black velvet, but I think this really adds to the modern feel. And then I went ahead and just did these little toppers because I'm going to use them either in a garland or in a bowl just to display them. But if you're going to hang them on your tree, you could easily get some thinner black velvet ribbon and hang them that way. I love that they are lightweight. If Finn decides to pick them up, they're not going to shatter. They're not going to transfer on your hands because the rub and buff dries completely dry, so it's not going to transfer. And I love how these turned out. They look a lot like the ones that I fell in love with, but like I said, they're not going to break on me. And I was able to make them for a fraction of the cost. Up next for you, I've got an essentially free DIY. You're going to grab a cardboard box or a piece of cardboard that you just have lying around your house, and you're going to cut it down into more manageable sizes to work with. Then we're going to take a pencil, we're going to rough out a bunch of different house shapes and cut them out. Then I'm going to use my favorite paint markers that I love to use from Amazon, and we are going to draw the houses and the details on. I pulled up some images of gingerbread house cookies that I liked so that I could follow those instead of just having to freehand, and it makes it so much easier. Once I had all of those, I grabbed a garland that I grabbed on clearance a few years ago from my stash, but you could use any type of bead, and I strung them up with a dowel needle. Now, when you're cutting out your houses, you want to make sure that the perforation of the cardboard goes horizontally because that's going to create a little tunnel for you to put your needle through and hang these up into a garland. That's it. Super easy and essentially free. I love how cute this is, and it will stay with you for years to come. I love that using cardboard makes these super sustainable as well as super inexpensive. And if you don't need a garland, here's how you can make these freestanding trees. You're going to grab a shape, or you can just freehand it to make 2 trees of the same size. And my large tray was from Target, and then this small wood cutout I think was from Hobby Lobby. So however many trees you want to make sure that you have 2 identical cardboard cutouts. We're going to find the center of the cardboard piece. Once I have my center marked, I'm also going to find the center middle of it. So then that way I know where my 2 pieces are going to intertwine. I'm creating a couple marks so that I know just about how wide my cardboard is to cut my slits, and I'm cutting one with a slit from the bottom to the middle, and then my second one is going to be the top to the middle. And I just went ahead and made a little mark so I knew right where the centers would line up. I went through with a white paint marker and did them in a gingerbread motif, but you could easily paint these red or green or whatever Christmas color that you want, and then go through with markers. This would also be a really fun thing to do with your kids when they're off on Christmas break and they just really need a boredom buster. So a ton of options and super duper free, because you know you got boxes laying around because it's that time of year. And if you loved those two cardboard projects, I have more on my channel, including this snowman garland. I will link this up above and down below for you if you want to see this tutorial. Next, we're going to grab some bells. These came from Dollar Tree, but you can find them anywhere this time of year. And you're going to start by spray painting them flat white. Then once they're fully dry, I brought them in. I added some fun ribbon to the top as well as jute twine, and then used a paint marker to create a fun little face with dots and just little noses with some paint. How cute are these fun little snowmen? I put them in this mug, but really you could use them for embellishments. They would also make really cute present toppers. Now, vintage Crocks are big in farmhouse decor, but if you get them from a boutique, they are super, super expensive. Sometimes you can find them at the thrift store with personalizations on it, like this one, but honestly, with it turned around, you would never know. So just put a small tree in it, make sure it's turned around. This one's from Target, and boom, a trendy tree holder. Or just add some greenery in your rolling pin, and it's great for your kitchen. If you can't find Crocks in the store, grab a utensil holder and just make one. Start with a tan base color. I use smoky beige. Then add a layer of textured stone spray paint from Rust-Oleum to get the stoneware look. Then I just seal it with a polyacrylic, and you can use them just the same. Baskets can also be used in the same way. This round one fits this tree perfectly, and it adds some texture to a setup. For this next one, you are going to want some unfinished wood shapes that are the size and shape of cookies. So stars, snowflakes, whatever. You can find these at places like Hobby Lobby, Walmart, Dollar Tree, really anywhere that has them. You can also find these online, Etsy, and Amazon. I laid them all out into a wreath shape, and then I needed to do some prep before I painted them. I used wood filler on anything that had a hole with a hanger, so then that way they were all solid shapes. Then I went outside, put them on some cookie cooling sheets, and spray painted all of them with this color Warm Caramel. This is my go-to for anything gingerbread that I'm spray painting. If you want to paint them by hand, you can use the color Nutmeg Brown. That's my go-to for hand painting. Then the star of the show, this puffy paint. I've been using this for years. Dollar Tree also has a version, so if you're able to find those, it is helpful. But all you need to do is pull up some cookies that you like and decorate. The little tip really helps make it easy to decorate so you don't have to feel like you need super skill to do it. Then I grabbed an old wreath that I saved from the donate pile, added this really pretty Dollar Tree velvet ribbon, and then I started laying out all of my cookies onto the wreath. Then I used a little dab of hot glue to hook it to this wreath. This wreath is like a rubber material, so the hot glue is fine right on it. If not, what you can do is glue a piece of floral wire and felt to the back and then use the floral wire to hook it to your wreath. So a couple different options. I love how this looks in my gingerbread setup. And if you want another level of Christmas magic, add some gingerbread essential oil to the top or put some cinnamon sticks in the wreath.
I love Christmas. It is truly a magical time of year, but let's be real. It is also so incredibly busy. From decorating to DIYing your gifts to just everyday life, I'm always looking for time-saving hacks that will still keep the magic alive while also not stressing me out. And that is why I love Wildgrain. Wildgrain is the first ever Bake from Frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, fresh pastas, and artisanal pastries. Everything goes from the freezer to the table in 25 minutes or less, and their breads bake right on your oven rack. Hello, one less dish to clean. This time we got the 6-item box, but you can choose to customize 4, 6, or 12 items in your box. And from that box, so far we've tried the pumpkin cinnamon biscuits and apple cider donuts. Both were huge family favorites for breakfast. The croissants came out so buttery and flaky, which are perfect for my chicken salad sandwiches. And this slow fermented olive oil ciabatta instantly upgraded our weeknight pasta dinner. Also in my freezer that I'm excited to try is their sourdough harvest loaf, maple Belgian waffles, and butternut squash ravioli. All of those are part of their seasonal selection, which is constantly rotating, and they've got fun limited time items that you want to jump on if you see them because they sell out quick. I absolutely love the smell of fresh bread and pastries throughout my house, but I'm not the best at like actually baking them to get to that smell. So Wildgrain makes it super easy. They take out all the stress and I still get that ambiance and that aroma without having to spend a ton of extra time. To try Wildgrain yourself, click the link in my description and use my code Whiskey and Wit to get $30 off your first box plus free croissants for life.
I want to say for the past 3 years, at least two, I have wanted some vintage gingerbread face ornaments, and this is the year I finally got around to making them myself. I grabbed these ornaments at Hobby Lobby, but Dollar Tree has them, Michael's, anywhere. And I used my contraption from my dupes video where I made those really pretty metallic ornaments to use it again to spray paint these. You just pop them over these bamboo sticks that I stuck into a box. And I tried to spin them around to get all the edges, but I still was left with this. So what I did is I put on a glove, I put them on my fingers, and then I used inside my spray paint tent to get the edges. That helped, so then that way they were fully covered. While those were drying, I cut out gingerbread faces on my Cricut, and this is a file from Etsy that I cut to 3.5 inches. I grabbed the girl face as well as the boy face, but there are a ton of other free options. I will link a couple like Design Space and free options down below, but this creator did such a good job making the face that was right up my alley for the vintage vibe I was looking for. So you definitely don't need a Cricut to make these. You could also draw on the face or do a printable face, whatever works for you and what you have available to you. Then I'm going to take the white pieces of the eyes and apply them to the face. And I'm using parchment paper to help line them up just because there have been so many times I have tried to apply layered vinyl and you go to stick it down, it sticks in the wrong spot and you ruin the decal, which is such a pain. So here I am just using that parchment paper to slide and make sure the eyes are the right size because the boys' eyes were a little bit bigger than the girls' and I cut them all at the same time. Then we're going to use that paper transfer tape, stick it down, and then peel it up just enough so you can just slide that parchment paper out. And you're going to get your eye, like the whites of the eyes, right where you need them. So parchment paper, huge, huge help when you are layering vinyl. Now, because there's a few different pieces going here, I ended up doing just the black part of the face as well as the whites of the eyes, and then I added the red by hand. And here as I'm applying the paper transfer tape, I'm doing that because it's lower tack. I don't want to peel up any of that spray paint. And also it's easier to crease like this. So you see how there's a crease between the cheek and the eyeball? That is going to make it so your vinyl doesn't crease. So just don't push it down fully, push down your mouth, push down your nose, and then push down your eyes, and that will really help with bubbles. Then, like I said, we are going to fill these little areas with the white part of the nose, red part of the nose, and then I just had to match up the cheeks, but it was really easy to do by hand, so it's not something that you need to layer. Just with the way that the white went on the nose, it was just easier for me to do it this way. Then to finish them off, I used some of this Dollar Tree gingham print ribbon I just got, but it was not in the Christmas section. This I think is actually Valentine's Day or 4th of July, but this is the motif that's in my dining room. So I grabbed a bunch of those, tied and cut it off, and then I used a paint marker to do a little squiggle around the outside, and boom, these are the ornaments of my dreams. I love them so much. I can't wait to get them on my gingerbread tree. I think they are so, so cute. Now I know some of you are seeing these cute little candies and wondering how to make them. Let me show you that next. I made these a couple years ago and they were so easy and I love them so much I needed a couple more for my house. So they're actually just bump pans from the thrift store. Just get the ones that are super cheap. All of these were under $2, most were 99 cents. And I spray painted about half of them white, half of them with that red color. And then I used corresponding red and white chalk paint to paint the grooves to make it look like a little candy. You can update these as much as you want. So if you do kind of a pastel Candyland, or if you want some green in there, or if you just want them to be red, whatever floats your boat, you can customize these and it is so fun. This would also be a really fun thing to do with kids or grandkids to have them decorate it. Then to make them really look like candies, we are grabbing some cellophane from the Dollar Tree party section. Then we're going to use that same ribbon from our ornaments and tie off the ends. I also used some double stick tape on the back to get the cellophane to stay so it's not moving while I'm tying it. Then we're going to diagonal cut our ends, and then if you need to trim down the cellophane, just hold it together, cut straight. And these things, I just love them so much. That's why I made more this year, because I had some that were above my cabinets. I wanted some for my trees, and you can really customize the size that you want based on where you need to decorate. Back in the fall, we duped some of these large artwork pieces and you guys loved them, so I wanted to come back with a little variation for Christmas. When I did the ones for the fall, I made huge ones that were 20 by 30, which is the full size of a Dollar Tree piece of foam board. Instead, this time I decided to go with a 16 by 20. So what you're going to want to do is set your saw to a 45-degree angle and cut from long point to long point 16 inches. Then I used my piece as a template to then cut a second 16-inch piece. And then you're going to want to measure again and do two pieces 20 inches long point to long point because I'm using a 16 by 20 poster. It depends on the size of what you're doing, how much wood you're going to need, but for the 16 by 20, this was a great size. Then all your 45-degree angles will fit together like so. And then as always, I am sanding everything and then I'm going to stain it with Early American Stain just because that matches my house, but you could paint the frame, stain the frame, you could add gold leaf to the frame, so many options. Then for my posters, I ordered these 16 by 20s from Wildgrain. They had a sale going on. You can get 60% off the posters, so these were like $8. And then you're going to use some matte Mod Podge to really make this sing. I like the matte Mod Podge because A, it takes the sheen off of the photo poster because it's kind of a photo material. And I also love that it's going to give it texture. So the first coat, we're just going to go through and cover the whole thing. We're not going to worry about being too neat. Just use your Mod Podge and cover the whole thing. Then let that dry, and then we're going to go back in with some additional touches to make it look really neat. I did learn after the first one that if you dump a little bit of Mod Podge, it makes it a lot easier than going back into the container with your brush. And I also definitely suggest using a bristled paintbrush instead of a foam brush to get the look that we're trying to get here. Then once that first coat is dry, I'm going to go through with a little bit more Mod Podge and cake it on where it looks like there would be built up paint if somebody painted it. So these eaves here, I did it around the plants and I also did the greenery around the top. When it dries, you're really going to make it look like it's an oil painting or an actual painting, which is awesome. This is what I did on the tree for the scene from the town, and that really helped as well. Then once everything's dry, your stain and your poster, we're going to assemble. So I'm using double-sided tape to mount it to just some Dollar Tree foam board. And I like to do all of the corners as well as the center and the edges so then that way it doesn't pop up on me. Once I did that, I used my little slice cutter, which has a ceramic blade, to score the edge and then cut the back. I like the ceramic blade because it's not as sharp as a regular blade and it lasts a lot longer, but if Finn for some reason were to grab that, it's not going to hurt him. It's not going to cut your finger, but it will cut through your tape, your boxes, etc., which is really nice. I will link it down below. Then I'm going to take those frame pieces, line them up, get them where I want, and then so they don't move on me when I'm going to assemble, I'm going to use some painter's tape. I'm just going to put it on the edges so then that way nothing's going to pop off, and then I can easily flip it over and start stapling. I like to do a diagonal staple like this on each corner just so then one side of each of the prongs is in each side of the border. And then I just go around the outside making sure everything is tacked down with the staple gun. I am using 1/2-inch staples here and my DeWalt little hand pump staple gun. Then your last step is to remove your tape if you use that to help hold everything together, and then you are ready to decorate. I love these images. They are from Etsy. When I'm looking at printables and making my own, I do a lot better in the graphics department. And so artwork like this, I definitely defer to either Etsy or another place like Creative Fabrica, just so then that way I can get a real pretty picture like this. So I will link these down below where I got them from Etsy, but the texture on the tree and these snowmen are great, and I'm so excited to leave these guys up all winter long. For these skis, I grabbed 2 pointed fence pickets, and at Menards they ended up being $3.58 for 2 of them. Now while I'm looking at the wood, I'm going to hold it up and look straight down it like this to make sure it is not curved. There's plenty to choose from, so make sure you get a good piece of wood without a ton of knots as well. So I'm going in with my power sander, I'm sanding the whole thing, and then I'm going to curve the end so it looks more like a ski. I'm doing that by rocking my wrist around each of the corners, and that's going to help A, sand it down, and B, have it be more of a curved look instead of so pointed. Then I'm grabbing one of my favorite stain colors, Briar Smoke by Verthane, and I'm staining both of my skis. Now you can decorate yours however you want. I decided to do varsity type lines at the end, so I'm using 1-inch painter's tape to tape off that. I started with one piece at the bottom flush with the bottom of my ski. Then I'm using a spacer piece putting another piece, and then in the middle I ended up using 2 widths of the 1-inch painter's tape, so I had a thicker stripe in the middle. If you plan to put these outside, I would recommend sealing with a polyacrylic or a polyurethane, and then they're good to be displayed all winter long. I absolutely love this next project, and I know so many craft buddies do too. So many of you have told me that you've made this for your home, you've made it to sell, and it is a pretty quick and easy thing to do that gives you such an impact. You're going to start with a glass frame. Mine came from Dollar Tree, but if you can find them cheaper elsewhere, you can do that. You're going to cut down a 1x4 to 1 inch longer than your widest part of your frame. So mine's a 5x7, so I'm going to cut mine to 8 inches. I'm also going to cut an 8 inch of a 1/2 inch dowel and 8 inch of a 1/4 inch square dowel. I'm going to start with the 1/2 inch dowel and glue that to the front of the 1x4. I'm using Gorilla Wood Glue and clamps to hold it. Then once that dries, I'm going to stain the piece that I just put together, as well as that little dowel. The reason I did the little 1/4 inch dowel separate is because it allowed me to get into the nooks and crannies so you don't have any like unstained pieces. And then we're going to take some wood glue and stick this to the point that you can slide your glass easily in and out, but it's going to hold it and not fall over. So about whatever the thickness is of your glass. Then I'm going to spray one side of the glass twice with this frosted glass spray paint. You want it to be frosted, not completely covered. And then for the other side, I cut out a Cricut decal, but you could easily put a printout underneath and trace it with a paint marker or a paint pen. So if you don't have a Cricut, you could do that. And I'm cutting this to 7 inches wide so it covers my entire piece of glass. And you're going to slide your glass in, and all you need is some sort of light behind. It could be Christmas lights, it could be a real candle, it could be a faux candle, and you could sell so many of these. They are so beautiful and just the reason for the season. From what I am seeing with the early Christmas decor previews for 2025, it's that gold accents are going to be in this year, especially those gold frames again. I love to use Dollar Tree frames and make them over to get that high-end look. So this, yes, it's gold on its own, but what we're going to do is we're going to remove the back, we're going to spray paint it with some flat black spray paint, and then we're going to use some rub and buff to really give it that high-end look. So once they're dry, I'm going to use some gloves and my fingers to apply this rub and buff. It's kind of a paint. It is in the color Antique Gold, but they have a bunch of different kinds, so you can find the one that best matches your aesthetic. And I'm going to apply it all the way around with my finger, and then for that really ornate piece on the top, we're going to rub just over the top instead of getting into the crevices. Once you make it all the way around, you are good to go to put a printable or whatever you'd like in the frame. Dollar Tree also has these options, which I love because it looks like it has a mat in there. It's actually plastic, and I like the 4x4 to change it up instead of a traditional 4x6. I put some of my free printables in here. These will be available over on my blog. You can head over to my free file library and make sure you are an email subscriber because that is where you will get the password. And in addition to those, I've got a ton more printable files, like so many, over on my blog that are free for you. So head over, check it out. At the top, click Jump to Printables, and it will show you all the options that I have available. It's as easy as printing it out to your desired size, putting it in a frame, and you're good to go. Another great thing about the library is that it also includes SVG cut files and printable banners and other craft enhancements, I guess I would call them. So this gingerbread garland is free over there. It's under Printables, and these would also be really good for gift tags. Now, if you don't want to print this out, don't have a printer, whatever, you can find some plates like this. These are from Walmart, and do the exact same technique I'm going to show you right now. You're going to take a hole punch and punch a hole in either side so that you can hang them up. And I like to try to get it about the same height on all of them, so when they're hung up, they are going to lay the same. Then I'm using some baker's twine. This is from Hobby Lobby, but you can get it anywhere this time of year. And some wood beads from my stash to give them a little bit of a spacer. I printed this on regular cardstock, nothing crazy like 65-pound cardstock, and I love how this turned out. This is another thing I can't wait to get into my dining room. Mercury glass as well as metallic finishes are huge for the holidays, but they can get expensive, so we are going to dupe it with a thrifted hurricane vase. You can also use something you already have. Start by spraying the inside with a metallic gold spray paint, and then here's where the magic happens. Then I filled the spray bottle with about 3/4 water to 1/4 white vinegar, and then grabbed some mirrored glass spray paint. I tried a few different techniques, but the one that I liked the best was when I sprayed the mirror glass spray paint onto the vase, and then I spritzed it with the water vinegar mixture from a distance. That created some little water droplets on the surface. For the first 2 coats, I used a paper towel to pop the water bubbles, and then on the third and final coat, I just let it dry completely with the water on the surface, and that gave it a great look. I let it completely dry overnight, and I added these LED candles from Amazon, but you could also add a real one, and bam, West Elm dupe for under $5. The glow just feels like Christmas to me.
Every year when I share these marshmallows, I get a ton of questions on how to make them, and they are so easy. You are going to be shocked on how easy they are. Plus, we're going to make some peppermints too. All of them are going to start with some white Model Magic from Crayola. You can get a bag of this for under $5 at any craft store, also Amazon. I'm going to roll it into a ball, and then I'm going to flatten it, kind of like a pizza, and then I'm going to roll the edges so it looks like a peppermint. Do as many of those as you need, and then we're going to move on to some oblong peppermints. So here I'm making just kind of a strip, and the feel here is just like you're playing with Play-Doh. It is fun. This will dry overnight to the touch and then fully in 72 hours. So usually I give it overnight before I mess with it or paint it or anything. I use my Cricut tool, but you could use whatever flat edge you have, gift card, credit card, whatever, and segment those apart, and then I'm rolling them around to kind of make them look like a marshmallow, but a little bit not as uniform. Then for the actual marshmallow, I'm going to roll it into a ball in my hands, and then I'm going to roll it out into a marshmallow shape. The ball in your hand is going to help with the creases and cracking on there. Then once they dry overnight, the peppermints needed some red on there. You can't just have the white. So I went through and started at the center with my little paintbrush and made these little radial pieces on the way out. Now you're going to need 8 lines evenly spaced around the center. I got a little too big for my britches here and just freehanded it wrong, but don't worry, I was able to fix it. And then you're going to let those fully dry. Really, they dry super fast. It's not going to take that long. Then for my little peppermints, I'm taking that same paintbrush and doing diagonal lines up from the bottom. You can make them as thick or as thin as you want. You're going to work your way all the way around the outside, and I really appreciated using a toothpick or bamboo skewer to hold them because there was really no other way to hold them. And then you're also going to extend those to the top and the bottom. Then to wrap these up, you're going to want some of these rubber bands from Dollar Tree, as well as some more of that cellophane we grabbed for the bundt pan project. And we are going to roll this up. You can use some double-sided tape if you need it to stay, but these were just scraps actually from those bundt pan ones that I did, and it was great because it worked out perfectly. Then you're going to take those hair ties that are clear and tie the ends. That way it is going to stay like candy, but it is not going to unravel on you, and it's going to look like they're real because they're just twisted on the ends. I love these. I had a teacher actually in middle school give us these before our science test because she said mint helps like expand your brain power, I guess. I always think of her when I see these, but I thought these would be so fun. You can add them to bowls, to setups. You can also add your peppermints to a garland, and they really pop. Now, what about those actual marshmallows? You can use them in displays like this. You can just put them in a mug on a tiered tray. And the great thing about this here is you can get a really full look without making a ton of these. So I only used one of those bags to make all of these in this video. And all you need to do is add some stuffing to the bottom. This is a little polyfill and a paper towel, actually. It doesn't have to be fancy. I just like to try to find stuff that's white. And this is a thrifted mug. I fit them all in there, and it looks so good. Now, where are my chocolate lovers at? You can also add some faux chocolate to the top before you let them dry overnight. Take one of these cake pop sticks, or you could use a bamboo skewer, and put it in the center of your marshmallow. Let them dry like that overnight. And then we're going to take some of this puffy paint, but in brown, like we used on the gingerbread houses earlier. I'm going to fill the top and tap it on the table, and that is going to give you the beautiful melted chocolate look on the sides. Get it to where you want it, and then put them somewhere so that they can dry. And then I just added some more of that ribbon that I've been talking about the whole time. And these are a great addition to my grandma's hutch. I will be sharing setups and stuff next week once I get my tuition gear and get everything set up in our house. I'm about 60% of the way there, so we're going to be finishing that this weekend, so stay tuned for that. For this next project, we are grabbing this unfinished wood nativity set from Hobby Lobby. They have them every year, and if you get them on sale, it is going to be super inexpensive, like mine was under $7.
I'm going to lay everything out and use some sandpaper to make sure I get rid of any of those little unfinished bits, and then make sure I know about how wide it's going to set up. Then I'm going to grab some 1x2 wood and figure out how long I need to cut it, mark it, and head outside to cut the piece. You could also use a handsaw for this. Then I'm going to sand the entire piece just to make sure that everything is nice and smooth, and then you can choose to paint or stain the bottom. I decided to use Early American Stain by Minwax. Then to save some time and energy, I'm using flat black spray paint to spray paint the edges and tops and bottoms of my figurines to make it look like a silhouette. Then I'm going to use some of the super glue gel from Dollar Tree that works well on wood. I'm going to stick my figurines on there and let it dry overnight. That is how quick and easy it is. This thing is beautiful, and this is also a great piece you can make to sell. I did a craft show 2 years ago, and I sold 6 of them for $35 each at the craft show. They look super high-end. You wouldn't guess it's just a craft kit from Hobby Lobby, and it is such a beautiful piece of decor. And here are a couple tips from me to you to save in your back pocket for when you are wrapping up the holiday season. This will totally help. First, go around and take some pictures and video if needed of your holiday decor. This may seem silly, they don't have to be high-end pictures, just snap them on your phone, your tablet, whatever you have. You are going to be thankful you have them next year, especially if you did a new setup or if you did something different than you have in years past. I had a lot of craft buddies asking me how I got this art on my TV and my home tour, and it is so easy, so I wanted to share it. All you need is a smart TV, something that's hooked up to the YouTube app. You're going to go and search for Christmas art for TV. You can do this for any season, so summer art, fall art, spring art. I find one that I like, and then I also go up to the picture mode and I mess around with it. Sometimes you'll get really bright ones. The sepia tone or the more matte tone looks more like a picture on the TV, and then you just let it run for as long as you want the art to be up on your screen.
Hey Craft Buddy, are you loving this Christmas inspiration? I sure hope so. If you are, be sure to leave me a comment. That really helps out my channel, and also it lets me know what types of content and projects you are enjoying. Also, if you aren't on my email list and you want access to all of the free printables, cut files, templates, all the things I'm mentioning today, be sure to either scan this QR code or head to the description. Sign up, it's absolutely free. That'll give you the password. You can log in and have access to hundreds of free files that you can craft with, both for Christmas and beyond.
You guys know I'm a fan of doing look for less dupes, and I wanted to find something that was about the size of these Pottery Barn ones. I saw a creator on Instagram go viral. Her name is Tina Lee Mack. I will link her information down below, and she used these $5 ones from Michaels, and let me tell you guys, these are perfect. All you have to do is remove the million stickers that they have on them, and then I used a heat gun to pop off some of the wood pieces that I didn't want or if they didn't get glued on properly, and then I gave all of them 2 to 3 coats depending on the house of nutmeg brown paint. Now you could spray paint them, but I was worried that it would go through those doors and make the inside look wonky or cover the light, and you can't really pop the light out, so just FYI. Then we're going to grab some puffy fabric paint and an inspiration image. You can use my video. You can find the reel that I'm sharing that was Tina's. You can also look up things on Pinterest. And my best tips are outline everything, including the windows, the doors, outside edges of the gingerbread house, like you would need to glue them together. And then also make sure you do a good job of flooding areas like this where it looks like the icing would be dripping. That's going to give you the best look. Overall, this took me a couple days to do, but really I just needed to stop because I got a little bit of a hand cramp from the paint after doing it for a while. So I did a couple things, moved on, but I absolutely love these. The plan for these are to put them in my dining room right along the main table. I love all the scenes in Gimples and Elf, so I had to recreate this free printable banner, Welcome Santa. So you can get this file, this PDF, over on my blog. Just print it out. I suggest on some white cardstock, cut them out, and then I punched holes in either corner. Now you might notice that they're hearts because I couldn't find my regular punch. Nonetheless, that plus some hand cut snowflakes is just what this setup needed. And if you are unsure how to make your own snowflakes, no worries. There are a ton of templates online. Just Google, hand cut paper snowflake template, something like that. But I just kind of had a blast. It was very cathartic, and I cut my own. Now, as you can see, I have a whole setup, and I did this part of a Christmas movie video. So the video is full of everything from Elf, Christmas Vacation. I also did a Christmas Story. We did some Grinch. We did some Rudolph, so many fun things for Christmas. So if you love Christmas movies or have kiddos who love Christmas movies, you're definitely going to want to check out that video, and I will link it for you up above and down below. And while we're on the topic of Christmas movies, I also have a couple other things that I would like you to be aware of in case you're interested. I made this really fun Polar Express wreath last year from a cheap wreath, some foam board, and this Dollar Tree light. It was a mystery box project, so if you are a fan of that movie, you're definitely going to want to check out that video. I'll link it for you. And then also, my son Finn is obsessed, that might be an understatement, with trains. So for his 4th birthday, he had a train themed party, and so I created this huge cardboard Polar Express looking train. The reason I'm sharing this is because if you've got a Polar Express breakfast or you want to make a train like this, you could paint it whatever you want, but this steam engine is so fun. I made it out of boxes from Home Depot, so I will put the birthday video where I show you how to do that. And then finally, if you love Christmas Vacation as much as I do, I have so many DIYs, it is not even funny. So if you want to see my collection as well as those DIYs, I did a full Griswold extravaganza last year, so I will link that for you as well. When I saw this next one, it was one of those things that I see the price and I almost fell over. Look how expensive these cedar wreaths are, just with a little bit of ribbon. So we are going to head out. We're going to find some wreaths that we like for our house. Target had a ton of options. Hobby Lobby, Michaels, they all have their own version of these smaller wreaths. So grab what you like. Then I'm going to create another one of those double bows. And then I'm also going to cut about 24 inches of this ribbon so that I can add a hanger. I'm going to take the 2 ends of that ribbon and glue them together, so then that way it has a hanging mechanism. And what I'm also going to do is, before I glue on the front bow, I am going to pull this around, so where I just glued them together is going to be behind my wreath, so it looks like one continuous piece of ribbon. Take a little bit more hot glue, glue on that bow that you just tied, and these things can be put seriously anywhere. One of the best places I love to put wreaths this size during Christmas are on my white cabinets in my kitchen. It's really quick and easy to do, and it adds such a pop of color. What I like to do is use some painter's tape right inside the cabinet door. It holds them all season long because they're not super heavy, and they're really easy to remove with no residue after the season. These Hobby Lobby wreaths were under $5 plus a little bit of ribbon. You could do your whole kitchen for way less than the set that they're selling. One of my favorite items to grab year-round at the thrift store are pitchers and vases because they're really easy to make over. If you find one in a color that you like, just add some sprigs. These are from Walmart and you are good to go. If you find one like this glass one where you love the shape but it doesn't really scream Christmas, spray paint is one of your best friends when you're thrifting. I just went through and spray painted this with a satin apple red, made sure I gave it a really good coat, and then I also found this other shape, which again, the black wasn't screaming Christmas, so I used this hunter green to cover it. Then, before I was finished, I went through with some white acrylic paint. I put it on the end of a paintbrush. You can also use an old toothbrush for this, and you're just going to flick some of that paint off to get these splotches. It kind of gives me a snow vibe, and it really just helps it pop instead of a one-dimensional thing without having to have any artistic ability whatsoever. Add the leaves or the sprigs or the picks to this one, and voila, this is a great addition to any setup, and it's great for the center of your table, only a couple bucks. Something I know I scored this year because I was looking in October were these skates. I found them in the sporting goods section, and I've been looking for skates like this in white but had some wear and tear because I wanted them to look vintage. I tied the shoelaces together and then I added them to my DIY fence picket sled. I will link the DIY down below if you want that tutorial. But I hung them on there. It was so easy to do, and I love how this looks. I've been hunting for skates like this for a while, so keep in mind you may not find stuff right away, but if you keep an open mind and make sure that you check other areas, you will be in luck. If you don't have a sled to hook them onto, they also look really cute on a blanket ladder here. These are just picks from Hobby Lobby that I added, and I am just so happy with this find. After my Christmas in July wood build video, I had a ton of 2x4 scrap left over, so here is how I used that. So the first thing I needed to do was decide which one was going to be what, and so I decided that my two larger ones were going to be a snowman and a Santa Claus. And my smaller one was going to be a gingerbread girl. So I started with some white chalk paint and I painted both of the large ones white to give me a snowman base, but then also to give me a primer for my Santa Claus. And then I also used some brown paint that looks like chocolate. I think the color is milk chocolate, and I painted that one. For the gingerbread girl, just pulled up an inspo pick and painted it. Then I grabbed some red felt and some red gingham fabric to make a bow. I just glued this together, gathered the center of both of them with some little hair elastics, and then I made a little strip to glue around the front. Now for our snowman. Remember earlier when I said you could easily make a nose out of cardboard? It's as easy as cutting it out with scissors and painting it orange, especially if you're going to keep the item inside. It is the perfect way to get a 3D shape, little to no tools, little to no cost. Then onto the snowman, I took some red fabric because I'm trying to do a Christmas themed grouping here, so I wanted the red to tie them all together. And I cut some of this fabric I've had for years. I kind of hemmed the one edge with hot glue. I wrapped it around the top and hooked the hat on. Then I gathered the top with a rubber band, and then I cut slits in that extra fabric to create a pom-pom. Once my slits were where I wanted, I kind of gave it a haircut, so then that way the pom-pom would be where I wanted it. And then I added a cute little face and some blush cheeks. I ended up adding some shading, so mixing some brown and some white. I added that also to the nose. I did a paint marker and made some dots, and then I just kind of did what I was feeling with lines around the outside. And then to finish it off, I ripped some rag ribbon from fabric. You just create a slit and rip it. And I gave him a cute little scarf to match. I also updated the cheeks because they were a little too pink for me, so I muted them and they were much more what I was going for. And finally for our Santa Claus. So it took me a couple tries to get a skin tone that I liked because I didn't have that on hand, so I had to mix one. I finally did like orange, a little bit of brown, a little bit of pink, a little bit of white. I wasted a lot of paint as you can see, but I got a color that I liked. And then I also cut a nose out of cardboard. Now we're going to start with Santa's hat, and I glued a piece of burlap to kind of hem it. And then I started with some nautical rope from Dollar Tree. I saw an adorable tutorial on TikTok for the Santa Claus, and I knew I had to take my own liberties and make my own. And so I took a pick and started combing it so this looked more like Santa's beard. I used hot glue, and I started with kind of like the mustache area. I glued it down, and I'm untwisting as I'm sticking it down with the hot glue. And then I'm also going to add the bottom part of the beard, just cutting as I go and making sure that I comb everything out. Then I also did a longer piece for around the top so I could have a hairline and hair on either side of his face for the beard. And then I started to glue my hat. I kind of glued it down like a present, and as I'm folding, I want the front tip to be kind of pointy, so then that way I can add another piece to make it look like a Santa hat. Once that's all glued down, I am gluing another strip of burlap, and I'm going to fold the corner in to kind of have it sit like a hat. And then this process is kind of trust the process. I'm gluing it down so it sits how I want it, and then I use my pom-pom maker to create a white pom-pom. Once the pom-pom was glued down, I gave him a haircut. I added a face, and then I also added some white chiffon ribbon around the top with hot glue to be the kind of white strip of the hat. And then my last step was to give Santa a face and glue on the little cardboard nose. I had painted that in the flesh color that I created earlier for the base, and then I, like usual, pulled up an inspo pic and did my thing. I love these. They turned out so cute, and these are going to be perfect for my gingerbread hutch this year.
That's going to do it for this mega kickoff to the Christmas season. You guys, I am so excited for what I have planned for Christmas. So be sure you are subscribed so you will not miss all of that content. Also, make sure you turn on your little notifications so YouTube will let you know every time I post a new video. And one better, if you're on my email list, I send out a new email every time a new video goes live, so you won't miss it, even if YouTube does something wonky with your notifications. A huge thank you to Wildgrain for helping me bring you guys all of this inspiration today. If you would like to try out Wildgrain, head to the link in my description and use the code Whiskey and Whit for $30 off your first box plus free croissants for life. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you back here soon for more Christmas inspiration and beyond. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!